The history of numbers in NASCAR is fascinating to say the least, and the stories behind the men who piloted some of these numbers is arguably more infatuating. As you can tell by the title of this video, I'll be taking a look at the king of each number in the NASCAR Cup Series and taking a deep dive into the history of those who have piloted those specific numbers. So without further delay, let's get right into it. Across many different forms of motorsports, the number 1 is one of the most coveted numbers and a downright honor to have. F1 only gives this number to the defending champion if they choose to take it, and IndyCar only gives this number under very special circumstances, the like of which include the defending champion. However, in NASCAR, it's just another number, and you can try your hand at the boldest and most brash numeral. Many drivers have piloted this famed number and have won in it too. The driver that is currently piloting the 1 is our most recent winner, that being Ross Chastain. Before him there was Kurt Busch, who wheeled it to 3 wins between 2019 and 2021 and the best points finish of 10th. And before him, there was the driver who I'll be dubbing the king of the number 1, Jamie McMurray. Before McMurray strapped behind the wheel of the 1, he was known as a relatively mid-pack driver, with the only noteworthy thing to note here being his stellar car control. Nonetheless, he got his first win in only his second start, cementing himself in NASCAR for the next decade to come. After several lackluster seasons at Ganassi, he moved to Roush for 2006, and scored a win there. However, being constantly outrun by your teammates doesn't help your cause, and when they implemented a new rule that capped the teams to 4, Roush had to downsize and they cut McMurray. So, the following year, McMurray ended up joining Chip Ganassi Racing and had his best season of his entire career, scoring 3 wins. 2 of those were crown jewels, being the Daytona 500 and Brickyard 400. Nonetheless, one more win at Talladega in 2013 and an All-Star win in 2014 spelled the end of Jamie Mac's winning days, and departed from Chip Ganassi Racing, finishing 18th at Homestead, Miami in 2018. As for the king of the number 2, that's a little harder to rip through because the debate is going to be between Rusty Wallace and Brad Keselowski. Now, Keselowski won a championship with the number, but Wallace has more wins, more top 5s, and, well, more everything. As for synonymity, Wallace is arguably the heavy lifter here. Nonetheless, I'm going to give the honor to Rusty Wallace, seeing how he spent a little bit of a longer time behind the number 2 versus Keselowski. That's not to discredit any of Keselowski's numerous accolades behind this number. Barring that championship, he recorded 34 wins, so far the only 34 of his career, and 16 poles. As for other notable drivers behind the 2, you have Bobby Allison, who scored 7 wins, Kurt Busch, who from 2006 to 2010 scored 8 wins, and Dale Earnhardt, who won the 1980 championship, his first with this number. So far, the most recent driver is also the most recent winner, with Austin Cindric winning the Daytona 500, something nobody else with the 2 did. Now, I mentioned Dale Earnhardt as an honorable mention for the number 2, but he's far from that in regards to the 3. With his 67 wins and 6 championships behind the number, it's not even a competition as for who is the king of the number 3. As for other notable drivers, it's not worth mentioning Junior Johnson, who claimed this number to fame in NASCAR's pioneer era. In the infamous White 3, he wheeled his innovative design to 9 wins. The most recent winner and driver is Austin Dillon, who brought the number back from a 13-year hiatus. We all know the reason why, but it still is pretty shocking how a number was purposely forbidden. Currently, Dillon has 3 wins and 6 poles, and is on the rise to potentially get win number 4. Speaking of 4s, let's talk about car number 4. Kevin Harvick's 35 wins and 2014 championship with this number put him well clear of Rex White's 26 wins. White was a notable frontrunner in the early 60s, but Harvick's close ties with the number 4 and his success put him in front of old Rex. Ernie Irvan and Sterling Marlin are also notable drivers with this number, both who piloted to several wins under the Morgan McLaren banner in the mid-90s. Another recent name is Casey Kane, who isn't really in the conversation as he only has 1 win with the number 4, coming at Phoenix in 2011. The number 5 is tightly tucked in the palms of Rick Hendrick, and currently right now, Terry Labonte stands as the king of this number. With the 1996 championship, a couple of crown jewels, and 12 wins, Labonte was certainly one of the more memorable drivers behind the 5. However, if Kyle Larson, the most recent winner with the number, stays at Hendrick with the number 5 for the rest of his career, he very well could challenge Labonte's reign. Larson has 11 wins, 1 behind Labonte, but Labonte crushes Larson in almost every other statistic. In championships, they're tied, so we'll just have to see how this progresses. In terms of other notable drivers behind this number, we have Jeff Bodine with 7 wins, Casey Kane with 6 wins, Kyle Busch and Ricky Rudd with 4 wins, as well as Mark Martin, who scored a second-place points finish with the number 5 in 2009. But Mark is probably more well-known for his success in a different number, that being the number 6, which he piloted from 1989 to 2006. Mark's 35 wins driving for the Cat in the Hat, as well as loads of other crown jewel wins, are astonishing. While there are a lot of heartbreaks, not just behind the number 6, but in his entire career, he far surpasses David Pearson, who was pretty popular with this number in the late 60s, even winning the 1966 championship. The most recent winner with this number was David Reagan, who won the July Daytona race in 2011. Other than that, there isn't a whole lot to say about his Roush stint. The most recent driver behind this number include Trevor Bayne until 2018, who didn't really do much, Matt Kenseth, who briefly revitalized the team in 2018, Ryan Newman, who took the team to the playoffs in 2019 and had an outstandingly consistent year with the number. Newman also had the number until after 2021, where the most recent driver took over, being Brad Keselowski. Not only the car, but the team itself. Next is a golden number, lucky number 7. The number 7's wheel has been placed in the hands of many different drivers and teams. Jim Reed ran 83 races with the number and took it to 7 wins. No, I'm not making that up. It was the only 7 wins of his career. Bob Flock, Bonte Flock, Frank Mundy, and Kyle Petty are some of the drivers to score at least a win with the number. But nobody did it better than Wisconsin's most ingenious and creative minds, Alan Kulwicki. Relentless for his pursuit of a racing empire, he's the last true driver owner in NASCAR history, owning 100% of his team and controlling who was in and who was out. As you may know, he was ruthless in his hiring process, but hey, the man did win the 1992 championship, scoring 1 point more than Bill Elliott. Tragically, he lost his life in the middle of 1993 with only 5 wins to his name. Many wonder how many more he could have gotten had he lived on, especially considering his replacement, Jeff Bodine, scored 4 wins with the number. The most recent driver to pilot the 7 is Corey LaJoie, who has had the number since the beginning of 2021. LaJoie's Team Spire Motorsports continues Kulwicki's legacy by being headquartered right where Allen's old team used to be at. As for the number 8, we all know who it is, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Jr.'s tenure in this car saw some of the finest moments in his Hall of Fame career, with 17 wins from Texas in 2000 to the emotional July 2001 Daytona race to the fall Dover race right after 9/11 to his first Daytona 500 win in 2004, right up until the spring Richmond race of 2006. The Bud 8 is one of the most recognizable cars in America, but that doesn't mean that another Red 8 doesn't rival it, that being Joe Weatherly. The 2-time NASCAR champion took his Budmore Engineering 8 car to 20 wins over the span of his career, which in the number was pretty short. Weatherly was one of the hardest racers to be fender-to-fender against, yet one of the more weirder personalities even by today's standards. Some say he once took practice laps wearing a Peter Pan suit. Others will point out his knack for partying early in the morning with Curtis Turner. All of this and more earned him the nickname, the Clown Prince of Racing. Nonetheless, the most recent driver probably wouldn't do all of that, but is still pretty hilarious, with that being Tyler Reddick. The win is imminent, and we'll just have to wait and see what lies ahead in Reddick's tenure in this 8 car. Honestly, to me, Reddick's pursuit of getting a win reminds me an awful lot of Chase Elliott before he got his win. Speaking of which, many NASCAR fans recognize that number 9 driven by Chase Elliott. But for those who don't know the reason why Elliott gave up the famed 24 for the 9, let me introduce you to the king of that number, Bill Elliott. With 38 wins in 446 races, almost 10,000 laps led, and a whopping 46 poles, the number 9 is to Bill Elliott like bread is to butter. Elliott ran this number under 3 different racing banners, the first being Elliott Racing in the late 70s to early 80s. From 1982 to 1991, Austin Bill from Dawsonville ran the number under Melling Racing, ultimately hitting his prime during this time and winning a championship, as well as 2 Daytona 500s. Another accomplishment you might have heard of is his setting of the fastest lap in NASCAR history at 212 miles per hour at the 1987 Talladega race. Inadvertently, he aided the surge of pack racing. Elliott's third and final stint in the number was arguably the most important, as he spent the last couple of years leading up to 2001 trying to form a racing dynasty. He had all the puzzle pieces, a celebrity invested in his team, Dan Marino, a big corporate that everyone can identify from a mile away, but unfortunately, as good as those schemes were and as close as he was, he just couldn't get the win. So, what gives? Was he just past his prime? Far from it. From 2001 to 2003, he notched 3 wins and a best points finish of 9th. Had he not reminded everyone who he was, we might have looked at Elliott in a dimmer light. After Bill, there was Casey Kane, who from 2004 to 2010 took the 9 to 11 wins and a best points finish of 8th in 2006. Kane is 3rd for most wins with this number. Then the Tasmanian Devil tried his hand at the 9, managing 2 wins in equipment that had no place running as good as it did. And that's proven by the fact Marcos Ambrose really only showed up on the road courses, winning 2, or better yet, really only showed up at Watkins Glen. After Sam Hornish Jr. vacated the number at the end of 2015, it was Chase Elliott's turn to bring fame back to the 9. And so far, he's done that, with 13 wins and a championship. Well, everyone likes a nice round number, and what number is more satisfying than the number 10? The 10 has a long and frankly tumultuous history in NASCAR, and is on the more least successful side of things. Greg Sachs was the first driver to win with the number at the 1985 Pepsi Firecracker 400, his only win of his career. Heck, Pretty much everything notable Sachs did came with the number, even though he only had a measly 9 starts. We'd have to wait a bit to see this number win again, but not long, as Dale Earnhardt blew a tire on the final lap, allowing Derek Cope to land his first win. First Daytona 500 and second win for the number. The small Wickham Racing team scored another one that seemingly gets lost in history at Dover later that year. After that, there was Ricky Rudd, who I will be dubbing the king of the 10. While many driver owners struggled in the 90s, Rudd was seemingly an anomaly, with Rudd Performance Motorsports scoring 6 wins and finishing inside the top 10 in points twice. The infamous Tide Rod is not only notable for its dazzling colors, but its records too. After Rudd, only 3 more wins were managed with this number to date. Johnny Benson Jr., a driver who always outperformed what his equipment was capable of, scored a win with the number in late 2002 at Rockingham. Danica Patrick sat on the pole for the 2013 Daytona 500 with this number, and replacement Eric Almirola seems to be on the up and up, scoring 2 wins with this number so far between 2018 and 2021, which makes me think a third could be on the horizon. The number 11 is a bit more storied, and I mean one number 1 isn't enough. How about 2 number 1s? With 227 wins and counting, the number 11 stands as the winningest number in NASCAR history. Not only that, but it has the most top 5s and top 10s. Everyone likes the 4-leaf clover, at least if you can catch one. And catching the driver of the 11 has always been a tall task for everyone in the field. The king of the 11 is Cale Yarborough, scoring 3 championships in a row, as well as 55 wins. A tough-as-nails driver cared little about caring, demanded the absolute best from himself, and took the field to new heights in the late 70s. The Hall of Famer is best known for driving the 11, but so is another Hall of Famer, Ned Jarrett. Jarrett's career was brief, considering he'd won everything he needed to in the early 60s. And I mean, if you had 49 wins to your name, a Southern 500 and 2 championships, as well as an endless amount of support from the fans, I'd say you'd done just about everything in NASCAR. Moving past Gentleman Ned, we move earlier to Junior Johnson, who took this number to, ironically, 11 wins in the late 50s. How about another Hall of Famer? After Yarborough, there was Darrell Waltrip. Waltrip's 43 wins and 3 championships with this number in the early 80s are impressive to say the least. And while he might have done most of the talking off track, his antics on track were just as engaging. Wow, there are a lot of Hall of Famers here. Surely that's it, right? Well, let's talk about a future Hall of Famer, the most recent driver and winner of this number, Denny Hamlin. Hamlin's 47 wins and counting and 3 Daytona 500s far outshadow the fact he's never won a title. And whoever said you need a title to solidify your career? As for other winners with the number, there's Parnelli Jones, the first winner in 1957, the aforementioned Bill Elliott, Jeff Bodine, Terry Labonte, Buddy Baker, AJ Foyt, Mario Andretti, Bobby Allison. Man, this number has some serious history. Oh, and speaking of Bobby Allison, let's talk about the number he's the king of, the number 12. While this number sort of comes and goes in the world of NASCAR, you can't ignore Allison's 25 wins and 28 poles with this number, as well as the magical father-son Daytona 500 in 1988. While it wasn't all roses and rainbows during his time in the 12, no one wheeled this number better than Bobby. However, that didn't stop some drivers from trying. Neil Bonnet took the number to 3 wins, sparking a career that had so much potential. Jeremy Mayfield came along almost a decade and a half later, and had all the highs and lows pretty much all at once. 3 wins sound nice until you look at the inconsistency Mayfield demonstrated in this car. A close second to Allison is Ryan Newman, whose 42 poles put his engineering mastery on full display. The current driver and most recent winner, Ryan Blaney, has so far taken the 12 to 6 wins and is looking to possibly take it to its first championship. Well, we've talked about round numbers, oblong numbers, lucky numbers, and historic numbers, so why don't we talk about the unluckiest number known to man, number 13. So unlucky, in fact, that some elevators don't even have this number for, well, reasons. So how unlucky is it? Well, only one driver has scored a win with the number, Johnny Rutherford. Thus, the king of the number 13 is Rutherford. He shook superstition aside and defied conventional law, and for that he deserves some praise. Born a short distance from where I reside in the ghostly town of Coffeyville, Kansas, Rutherford's first ever start with the number resulted in his win. And the win is a bit questionable by today's standards considering he won the duel at Daytona, back when it was a championship points-paying race. Nonetheless, 71 other drivers have made at least one start with the number to absolutely no avail. Richard Childress notably made a start with the 13 at the infamous first Talladega race. Recent NASCAR fans might remember Max Pappas' days in the blue Geico 13, or Casey Mears' stint with Germain Racing, or perhaps Ty Dillon. Dillon took it to 2 stage wins in 2019, and in some NASCAR fans' history books, he should have won the 2020 fall Talladega race. Since Rutherford, Dillon has probably been the most successful. The last driver to have piloted the number was David Starr at the 2021 Phoenix season finale, where he finished 33rd. Looking over at number 14, there are a lot of good drivers to take a look at. Bonnie Flock took this number to 14 wins during his prime and made quite the name for himself. What is up with these drivers winning the same amount of times as their car number? Jim Pascal and Herschel McGriff, yes, the oldest driver to ever start a NASCAR race at age 90 in 2018, took it to 7 and 4 wins respectively. Bobby Allison scored a win in this number pretty early on in his career. But in my opinion, and I'm sure you would agree, the king of the number 14 is Tony Stewart. Stewart wheeled the number 14 to 16 wins between 2009 and 2016. What's shocking is that he was basically a driver owner and made the jaw-dropping decision to leave Joe Gibbs Racing after 2008. However, in 2011, he found himself head-to-head against Carl Edwards for a championship, and the rest is history. His final and 49th Cup win in this number came when he booted Denny Hamlin out of the way to break a nasty 3-year winless streak. After Stewart retired, Clint Bowyer became the torchbearer for this number, winning twice in 2018. Though, to be fair, SHR as a whole was on another level that year. Though he came close, Michigan 2018 would be the last we'd see of Bowyer in victory lane. Bowyer's replacement, and the most recent driver to wheel the 14, is Chase Briscoe, who brought the number back to victory lane at Phoenix earlier this year. The king of the number 15 is without a doubt Bobby Allison. Allison took the 15 car to 14 wins, so close, in the late 1970s for the legendary car owner Bud Moore, who though not a driver is still strongly associated with that number. In 1978, Allison nearly bested Yarbrough to win the title, but was just narrowly beaten out. Ricky Rudd also drove the number after he was kicked out of RCR, scoring 6 wins in the process. He was kicked out in favor of Earnhardt and effectively traded his car for Earnhardt. From 1982 to 1983, Earnhardt drove the 15, scoring 3 wins. Benny Parsons and Jeff Bodine also recorded 3 wins with the number. Tim Flock and Morgan Shepherd are all honorable mentions as well. As for those that like recency, or I guess don't like history, Michael Waltrip took this number to 4 wins, partaking in DES dominance on the plate tracks. We all know how tragic his first win was, but to think that he broke NASCAR's longest winless streak to date is incredible. Waltrip later formed a team and hired Clint Bowyer for the 2012 season, which saw Bowyer nearly best Brad Keselowski to be champion in his number 15 car. His 3 wins, all coming in 2012, as well as his infamous itching arm, might sound ridiculous, but Bowyer was a serviceable driver behind the 15. He's so far the last driver to have won with the number. Currently, Rick Ware fields this number with drivers such as Garrett Smithley, J.J. Yaley, Joey Hand, and David Reagan. With 504 races in the number and 19 wins, Greg Biffle is easily the king of the number 16. Biffle was always the silent assassin, and while he doesn't and won't get talked about much in the history books, his on-track performance tells a tale. With the best finish of second, put some respect on the Biff. I don't care what anyone says, but Matt Kenseth is the king of the number 17. Yeah, David Pearson is associated heavily with the number. Yeah, he has 30 wins, and yes, he's probably far superior to Kenseth, but I don't care. Am I employing a little bit of recency bias? Absolutely. Honestly, the battle for the king of the 17 is who one personally associates the most with the number. There are 3 good options here, really. Darrell Waltrip has scored 15 wins at the number, and so if you're a fan of the 80s, you probably think Darrell Waltrip is the king of the number 17. There's also David Pearson, like I previously mentioned, and if you were born before then, you probably think Pearson is the king of the number. But I think most people born after the 80s probably associate Kenseth more heavily to the number 17, myself included. I say Kenseth, but who do you say? The number 18 is obviously Kyle Busch, no question. 56 wins in the number is impressive to say the least, and his 2 championships in the modern playoff era are pretty much otherworldly. If you don't think Kyle Busch is the rightful king of the 18, I implore you to dig through statistics, and you will find that conclusion. Labonte is a distant second with 21 wins and 1 championship. Dale Jarrett might have only gotten 2 wins with the number, but he did win a Daytona 500, and did get Joe Gibbs' team rolling. As for the 19, you have a good number of options here. After Johnny Rostick took the 19 to victory lane for the first time in 1960, the number 19 would not return to victory lane until 2004. You probably remember the clutch performance Jeremy Mayfield had when he just narrowly sneaked into the inaugural chase. Mayfield would win one more time with the number before another hiatus would happen. Cousin Carl left Jack Roush to join Joe Gibbs and would pilot the 19 beginning in 2015. His first win with the team came at the 2015 Coke 600, and his last win would be at Texas for a rain-shortened race. Ultimately, this put him in a championship situation, which unfortunately was never meant to be. With 5 wins, there was a lot of pressure for Daniel Suarez to do well, though, let's be honest, that never really happened. Since 2019, Martin Truex Jr. has carried the team on his shoulders, ushering in 12 wins in all, putting him as the king of the 19. Coupled with that, he has 2 runner-up finishes. The last number we'll talk about is the number 20. The legendary Marvin Panch was the first to win in the number beginning in 1961. But it wouldn't be until the young hotshot and Tony Stewart came in and won 3 times in 1999. In all, between 1999 and 2008, Stewart would win 33 times, which totals 67% of his entire career. Along with that, he'd win 2 championships, and many fans today look back at the Stewart-Gibbs days fondly. His replacement didn't fare too well, that being Joey Logano. Logano only managed 2 wins, a far cry from what we know of him today. Matt Kenseth was pretty successful in the car, and is second in wins with 15. His best season in the number was 2013, which saw him nearly win his second title. Eric Jones took the number to 2 wins after Kenseth at Daytona and Darlington in 2018 and 2019 respectively, and Christopher Bell has only a win on the Daytona road course in 2021 to show for. He is the most recent winner with the number, and hey, he's also the most recent pole sitter with the number as well. So, what did you make of all of this? Do you agree on where I stack some of these drivers? Are there some of these that you disagree with or agree with strongly? What numbers do you associate heavily with some of these particular numbers? Let me know all of this and more in the comment section below, and until next time, this has been the news. I'll see you.